Hello, this is our 300-hour yoga teacher training session for today, Monday, August 24th. No one showed up, so what I was thinking is I would just read a little bit more of the Shiva Samhita. It is one of the three major or classic texts of Hatha Yoga, and it's very interesting. And I will be getting the translation by James Mallinson, which looks like it is the best one. Right now, I will be reading the one that was published in 1914. And it also is okay, but not considered to be the best. It's by Rai Bahadur Shrisa Chandravasu. And this is a very interesting text. I'm going to read just a little bit from the Wikipedia article. We did read a little bit of it last time, but I thought I'd read through the whole chapter, the whole first chapter today. It's definitely worth looking at, especially if you're really interested in the subjects of Tantra and Hatha Yoga. Shiva Samhita means Shiva's compendium. It's a Sanskrit text on yoga written by an unknown author. Okay, so no one knows who the author actually was. The text is addressed by the Hindu god Shiva to his consort Parvati. So Shiva is like, you could say, married to Parvati, and Shiva and Parvati are gods. And the text claims to be Shiva talking to Parvati. So in a sense, you could say if this is like some human author who channeled this writing claiming to be Shiva speaking. This is not unheard of. You know, there, even to this day, there are people that channel writings that are by beings that are not in a body, that are discarnate. They're called discarnate entities or discarnate spirits. Okay. The text consists of 5 chapters, and the first chapter is a treatise that summarizes non-dual Vedanta, also called Advaita Vedanta. Advaita means non-dual. Non-dual Vedanta philosophy with influences from the Sri Vidya school of South India. And I mentioned last time that I was with a teacher who taught Sri Vidya. And she was based in South India, Bangalore, South India. The remaining chapters discuss yoga, the importance of a guru to a student, various asanas, mudras, and siddhis, meaning yogic powers, attainable with yoga and tantra. The Shiva Samhita is one of 3 major surviving classical treatises on Hatha Yoga, the other 2 being Gheranda Samhita and Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which we read. We read part of a lot of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. We didn't read the Gheranda Samhita. It is considered the most comprehensive treatise on Hatha Yoga, one that recommends that all householders practice and benefit from yoga. Over a dozen variant manuscripts of the text are known, and a critical edition of the text was published in 1999 by Kaivalya Dham Yoga Research Institute in India. Shiva Samhita has been dated by some scholars to be a 17th century text, while others, such as James Mallinson, a scholar of Sanskrit and Oriental studies known for his Hatha Yoga publications, dates the text to be pre-1500 CE, probably between 1300 and 1500 CE. Based on statements contained within the text, Mallinson also believes that the Shiva Samhita was composed in or around Varanasi, which is Benares, the holy city of India. It was called Benares by the British, but now it's changed its name back to Varanasi. Shiva Samhita declares itself to be a yoga text, but also refers to itself as a tantra in its 5 chapters. The first chapter starts with the statement, states Mallinson, that there is one eternal true knowledge. And the word for true knowledge there is jnana. There is one eternal true knowledge. Then discusses various doctrines of self-liberation, moksha, followed by asserting that yoga is the highest path. The opening chapter largely presents the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, but in the Sri Vidya Tantra format and style. The second chapter describes how the external observable macro phenomenon are internalized and have equivalence within one's body, how the outside world is within in the form of nadis, rivers, and the nadis translate as rivers or channels, fire, jiva, and others. The third chapter explains the importance of a guru, its various physiological theories, including 5 elements that constitute the body, stages of yoga practice, and a theory of asanas, postures. The fourth chapter presents mudras and states that yoga practice can lead to special siddhis or powers and awakening of the kundalini or inner dormant energy. The fifth chapter is the longest of 5 chapters in the text. It discusses what prevents an individual's self-liberation, types of students, inner energies and sounds, a theory and description of chakras and mantras. The Shiva Samhita talks about the complex physiology, names 84 different asanas, only 4 of which are described in detail, describes 5 specific types of prana, and provides techniques to regulate them. It also deals with abstract yogic philosophy, mudras, tantric practices, and meditation. The text states that a householder can practice yoga and benefit from it. Many English translations of the Shiva Samhita have been made. The earliest known English translation is by Sri Chandravasu in 1884 in Lahore, India, in the series known as the Sacred Books of the Hindus. The translation by Rai Bahadur and Sri Chandravasu, that's the one that we're going to be reading, came out in 1914. It's also in the series known as the Sacred Books of the Hindus. And it was the first translation to find a global audience. However, it omits certain sections such as Vajroli Mudra, probably because Vajroli Mudra is kind of like sexual and would not go over well with general reading public, and is considered inaccurate by some. In 2007, James Mallinson made a new translation to address these issues. The new translation is based on the only available critical edition of the text, the one published in 1999 by Kaivalya Dhamma Health and Yoga Research Center. Okay, so that's the Wikipedia article on this. Now we're going to read that translation that came out in 1914, and it's in the Sacred Books of the Hindus, and it starts, the first chapter, which we're going to be reading, is all about Advaita Vedanta. And I'm going to read kind of quickly because a lot of it is, I mean, you can read it quickly. I'm just going to summarize as we go along some of the major points of it. And we're just trying to get through this, first chapter today. And that might be all we do this time around. But I think this is very interesting that a text on Hatha Yoga and Tantra starts with a whole discussion of Advaita Vedanta. And that's something definitely to look into because they're not always in the same, you know, you wouldn't think it would be in a book on Hatha Yoga and Tantra. But it's not too surprising either, but it is a little bit. I also wanted to mention, I have this next to me so I can talk about it, A Course in Miracles. So A Course in Miracles is also a channeled writing, claims to be essentially the words of Jesus that came through a woman named Helen Schuckman back in the, from 1965 to 1972 or 73. And it's a 1,200-page book that she basically, she channeled or scribed, is the word, because she was hearing an inner voice that she couldn't even explain what it was exactly, but she would take notes, take shorthand notes of what she was getting, and she could stop it at any time. She was completely herself when she was receiving the messages, and she could stop it and go back to it at any time. It was still there. Channeling, though, generally is when a person goes into an altered state of consciousness, or they start to, like an entity is coming through them and they're not the same person anymore. And they might speak and someone writes it down. Usually they don't write it down themselves. Someone else would write it down. Or these days they take a video of you doing it. But the other reason to talk about A Course in Miracles is because some claim that it is also non-dual philosophy, similar to Advaita Vedanta, and it does have a lot of similarities to what this is saying, and I might mention that at certain points as we go along. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start reading. Chapter 1, Shiva Samhita, the compendium of Shiva. The jnana gnosis alone is real, or there is only one true eternal knowledge. It is without beginning or end. There exists no other real substance. Diversities which we see in this world are results of sense conditions. When the latter cease, then this jnana alone and nothing else remains. I, Ishvara, or Shiva, the lover of my devotees and giver of spiritual emancipation to all creatures, thus declare the science of yoga nushasana, the exposition of yoga. In it are discarded all those doctrines of disputants which lead to false knowledge. It is for the spiritual disenthrallment of persons whose minds are undistracted and fully turned towards me. So in other words, and the author, and Shiva, I guess, Ishvara, is going to explain what these disputants are and what they talk about. And he's going to say some surprising things about how, people talk about this and that, and they make claims for this and that, but basically they're all off base. They're all deluded, and then he's going to present the truth. All right. So some praise truth, others purification and asceticism. Some praise forgiveness, others equality and sincerity. Some praise almsgiving, others laud sacrifices made in honor of one's ancestors. Some praise action, karma, others think dispassion, vairagya, to be the best. Some wise persons praise the performance of the duties of the householder. Other authorities hold up fire sacrifice and etc. as the highest. Some praise mantra yoga, others the frequenting of places of pilgrimage. Thus diverse are the ways which people declare for emancipation or moksha. Being thus diversely engaged in this world, even those who still know what actions are good and what evil, though free from sin, become subject to bewilderment. Persons who follow these doctrines, having committed good and bad actions, constantly wander in the worlds in the cycle of birth and death, meaning samsara, bound by dire necessity. Others, wiser among the many, and eagerly devoted to the investigation of the occult, declare that the souls are many and eternal and omnipresent. Others say only those things can be said to exist which are perceived through the senses and nothing besides them. Where is heaven or hell? Such is their firm belief. Others believe the world to be a current of consciousness and no material entity. Some call the void as the greatest. Others believe in two essences, matter, prakriti, and spirit, purusha. That's what we find in the Yoga Sutras, that you have purusha and prakriti. Thus, believing in widely different doctrines with faces turned away from the supreme goal, they think, according to their understanding and education, that this universe is without God. Others believe there is a God, basing their assertions on various irrefutable arguments founded on texts, declaring difference between soul and God, and anxious to establish the existence of God. These and many other sages with various different denominations have been declared in the Shastras as leaders of the human mind into delusion. It is not possible to describe fully the doctrines of these persons so fond of quarrel and contention. People thus wander in this universe, being driven away from the path of an emancipation or moksha. Having studied all the Shastras and having pondered over them well again and again, this Yoga Shastra has been found to be the only true and firm doctrine. So Shiva is actually saying here, you know, I've looked at all these different doctrines, all these different texts, and the one that I'm giving you right now is the only true one. Since by yoga all this verily is known as a certainty, all exertion should be made to acquire it. What is the necessity then of any other doctrines? This Yoga Shastra now being declared by us is a very secret doctrine, only to be revealed to a high-souled pious devotee throughout the three worlds. Okay, it's a secret doctrine, should only be revealed to one who's really ready for it and who is, you know, truly on the path. There are two systems as found in the Vedas: karma kanda, which is the system of ritualism, and jnana kanda, which is that of wisdom or knowledge, true knowledge. Jnana kanda and karma kanda are again each subdivided into two parts. The karma kanda is twofold, consisting of injunctions and prohibitions. So that's yad. Okay, all right. Prohibited acts, when done, will certainly bring forth sin. From performance of enjoined acts, or those that are asked of us, there will come merit. There will result merit. The injunctions are threefold: nitya, regular; namitika, occasional; and kamya, optional. By the non-performance of nitya or daily rites, there accrues sin, but by their performance, no merit is gained, because they're expected of you. On the other hand, the occasional and optional duties, the two other categories, if done or left undone, produce merit or demerit. Fruits of actions are twofold: heaven or hell. The heavens are of various kinds, and so also hells are diverse. So there are many heavens and hells. There's not just one heaven and one hell. There are many heavens and hells. The good actions are verily heaven, and sinful deeds are verily hell. The creation is the natural outcome of karma and nothing else. Creatures enjoy many pleasures in heaven, many intolerable pains are suffered in hell. From sinful acts, pain; from good acts, happiness results. For the sake of happiness, men constantly perform good actions. When the sufferings for evil actions are gone through, then there take place rebirth certainly. When the fruits of good actions have been exhausted, then also verily the result is the same. So this was said all the way back in the Bhagavad Gita. This text comes, you know, probably at least 1,500 to 2,000 years later than that. But the Bhagavad Gita talks about how when you die, if you did basically good deeds, you will go to some kind of heavenly realm, but you won't stay there forever. You're going to have to come back into a body eventually, until you completely exhaust karma. And the same thing with going to hell. You know, if you mainly did bad deeds, then, or bad karma, then you will go to hell, but you will also come back. You won't stay there forever, but you're going to come back into a body, and you're going to keep working through your karma. Even in heaven, there is experiencing of pain by seeing the higher enjoyment of others. Verily, there is no doubt of it that this whole universe is full of sorrow. Okay, so heaven, we think of heaven in the Judeo-Christian tradition these days as, okay, you go to heaven and that's it. You're there. You reunite with your loved ones. Everything is hunky-dory till the end of time. But this is saying, no, even in heaven, you realize, there comes the realization that heaven ain't all that it's cracked up to be. The The classifiers of karma have divided it into two parts, good and bad actions. They are the veritable bondage of the embodied souls, each in its turn. Those who are not desirous of enjoying the fruits of their actions in this or next world should renounce all actions which are done with an eye to their fruits, and having similarly discarded the attachment for the daily and the namitika acts, should employ themselves in the practice of yoga. So this is those high-souled beings who are now going to practice yoga because they want to go beyond karma. They want to experience the truth, the true reality, the true knowledge that Shiva is talking about here. The wise yogi, having realized the truth of karma kanda works, should renounce them. And having left both virtue and vice, he must engage in jnana kanda, which is knowledge. So in other words, the wise yogi realizes even heaven is not worth it. You want to go beyond heaven. You want to go back to source. Right? That's the goal. You want to go back to that jnana, that true knowledge. The Vedic texts, the spirit ought to be seen. These are quotes. The spirit ought to be seen, and about it one must hear, etc., are the real saviors and givers of true knowledge. They must be studied with great care. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it probably means you have to know these things through direct experience. Okay, that intelligence which incites the functions into the paths of virtue or vice am I. That's Shiva talking. All this universe, movable and immovable, is from me. All things are preserved by me. All are absorbed into me at the time of pralaya, which is the dissolution of the universe, because there exists nothing but spirit, and I am that spirit. There exists nothing else. As in innumerable cups full of water, many reflections of the sun are seen, but the substance is the same. Similarly, individuals like cups are innumerable, but the vivifying spirit, like the sun, is one. As in a dream, the one soul creates many objects by mere willing, but on awakening, everything vanishes but the one soul. So is this universe. As through illusion, a rope appears like a snake, or pearl shell like silver, similarly, this universe is superimposed in the Paramatma, the universal spirit. As when the knowledge of the rope is obtained, the erroneous notion of its being a snake does not remain, so by the arising of knowledge of self vanishes this universe based on illusion. As when the knowledge of the mother of pearl is obtained, the erroneous notion of its being silver does not remain, so through the knowledge of spirit, the world always appears a delusion. As when a man besmears his eyelids with the collyrium prepared from the fat of frogs, a bamboo appears like a serpent, so the world appears in the Paramatma, owing to the delusive pigment of habit and imagination. As through knowledge of rope, the serpent appears a delusion, similarly through spiritual knowledge, the world. As through jaundiced eyes, white appear yellow, similarly through the disease of ignorance, this world appears in spirit, an error very difficult to be removed. As when the jaundice is removed, the patient sees the color as it is, so when delusive ignorance is destroyed, the true nature of the spirit is made manifest. As a rope can never become a snake in the past, present, or future, so the spirit which is beyond all gunas and which is pure never becomes the universe. This is also exactly what A Course in Miracles says, that God is, was, and always will be, and has never changed. It's never changed one bit, one iota. The universe did not even come from God, because the universe is an illusion. And how that works is the problem for us to figure out. The Hindus have this idea of Maya, that it's all really a trick of the mind. And it's really not even true, but it's somehow, this trick that we've all bought into. Some wise men well versed in scriptures, receiving the knowledge of spirit, have declared that even devas like Indra, etc., are non-eternal, subject to birth and death, and liable to destruction. So if heaven and hell, if the heavens and the hells are not real, ultimately, neither are the gods, in other words. Okay, because they're the rulers of these heavenly realms and hellish realms. So the gods are not ultimately real either. Like a bubble in the sea rising through the agitation of the wind, this transitory world arises from the spirit. The unity exists always. The diversity does not exist always. There comes a time when it ceases. Twofold, threefold, and manifold distinctions arise only through illusion. Whatever was, is, or will be, either formed or formless, in short, all this universe is superimposed on the Supreme Spirit. That idea of superimposition is a very key one. And we're not going to go into that right now, but you will hear that quite a bit in Advaita Vedanta. Suggested by the Lords of Suggestion comes out avidya. It is born of untruth, and its very essence is unreal. How can this world with such antecedents, foundations be true? We're not going to go over what that means, but this world is based on ignorance. All this universe, movable or immovable, has come out of intelligence, meaning Shiva or Jnana. Renouncing everything else takes shelter in it. Intelligence takes shelter in Shiva, cosmic intelligence. As space pervades the jar, both in and out, similarly within and beyond this ever-changing universe, there exists one universal spirit. As the space pervading the five false states of matter does not mix with them, so the spirit does not mix with this ever-changing universe. From devas down to this material universe, all are pervaded by one spirit. There is one Sat Chit Ananda, which is existence, intelligence, and bliss, all pervading and secondless, second to none. There's nothing besides it. Since it is not illumined by another, therefore it is self-luminous. And for that self-luminosity, the very nature of spirit is light. Since the spirit in its nature is not limited by time or space, it is therefore infinite, all-pervading, and entirely itself. Since the spirit is not unlike this world, which is composed of five states of matter that are false and subject to destruction, therefore it is eternal. It is never destroyed. Save and beyond it, there is no other substance, therefore it is one. Without it, everything else is false, therefore it is true existence. Since in this world created by ignorance, the destruction of sorrow means the gaining of happiness, and through gnosis or jnana, immunity from all sorrow ensues, therefore the spirit is bliss. So this world is filled with sorrow that comes from sorrow, and suffering comes from spiritual ignorance. If we were not spiritually ignorant, we would be in joy, in bliss, ananda. Since by gnosis is destroyed the ignorance, which is the cause of the universe, therefore the spirit is gnosis, and this gnosis is consequently eternal. Jnana, knowledge, true knowledge is essentially God or spirit. Since in time this manifold universe takes its origin, therefore there is one who is verily the self, unchanging through all times, who is one and unthinkable. You cannot conceive of what this is, of what we're talking about here. The mind cannot, the rational mind cannot conceive of it. All these external substances will perish in the course of time, but that spirit, which is indescribable by word, will exist without a second. Okay? So nothing really exists except that one thing, that one eternal spirit. Neither ether, air, fire, water, earth, nor their combinations, those are the five elements, nor the devas, the gods, are perfect. The spirit alone is so. Having renounced all false desires and abandoned all false worldly chains, the yogi sees certainly in his own spirit the universal spirit by the self. Having seen the spirit that brings forth happiness in his own spirit by the help of the self, he forgets this universe and enjoys the ineffable bliss of samadhi, which is, it translates as profound meditation. Maya, illusion, is the mother of the universe. Not from any other principle has the universe been created. When this Maya is destroyed, the world certainly does not exist. Okay, so when you go beyond Maya, which is the veil of illusion, the universe, the world and the universe are no more. They cease to exist, and you realize that they never really existed. They were not real. He to whom this world is but the pleasure ground of Maya, therefore contemptible and worthless, cannot find any happiness in riches, body, etc., nor in pleasures. So the yogi goes beyond all of the sense pleasures of the world. Does not seek them because he knows that they're not real. They're ultimately not real. Why would you want something that is not real? This world appears in three different aspects to men: either friendly, inimical, meaning unfriendly, or indifferent. Such is always found in worldly dealings. There is distinction also in substances, as they are good, bad, or indifferent. That one spirit, through differentiation, verily becomes a son, a father, etc. The sacred scriptures have demonstrated the universe to be I think it's the trick of Maya. The yogi destroys this phenomenal universe by realizing that it is but the result of adhyaropa, superimposition, and by means of apavida, refutation of a wrong belief. So yogi goes beyond Maya and realizes what it really is. When a person is free from the infinite distinctions and states of existence as caste, such as caste, individuality, etc., then he can say that he is indivisible intelligence and pure unit. The Lord willed to create his creatures. From his will came out avidya, ignorance, the mother of this false universe. There takes place the conjunction between the pure Brahma and avidya, from which arises Brahma, from which comes out the Akasha. So it's trying to talk about how this all came into being. And remember that Brahma is not Brahman. Brahma is the creator. And from Brahma comes avidya, ignorance. Now, this is a whole nother subject. It might talk more about it here, but it's trying to explain how the universe came into being. From the Akasha emanated the air, from the air came the fire, from the fire, water, and from the water came the earth. This is the order of subtle emanation. So these are how the senses came into being, not the senses, the five elements. So first there was ether, Akasha, then there was air, then there was fire, then there was water, then there was earth. From ether, air, from the air and ether combined came fire. From the triple compound of ether, air, and fire came water. And from the combination of ether, air, fire, and water was produced the gross earth, physical earth. The quality of ether is sound, of air, motion, and touch. Form is the quality of fire, and taste of water. So this is trying to now show how the five senses are connected to the five elements. And smell is the quality of the earth. There is no gainsaying this. You can't, in other words, you cannot deny this. Akasha has one quality, air 2, fire 3, water 4, and earth 5 qualities. Sound, touch, taste, form, and smell. This has been declared by the wise. Form is perceived through the eyes, smell through the nose, taste through the tongue, touch through the skin, and sound through the ear. These are verily the organs of perception. From intelligence has come out all this universe, movable and immovable, whether or not its existence can be inferred. The all-intelligence one does exist. Okay, so from cosmic intelligence or Shiva comes, or Jnana comes this whole universe. I have to plug this computer in now. So I need like 30 seconds to get the cord. Give me just a moment. I'm almost done. It smells good. on you. I can't pick you up right now, buddy. All right, we're going to continue with this talk. Almost done this reading for today. Here we go. Okay, the earth becomes subtle and is dissolved in water. Water is resolved into fire. Fire similarly emerges into air. Air gets absorbed in ether, or the akasha, and ether is resolved in avidya, ignorance, which merges into the great Brahma. Brahma is the creator deity. There are two forces, vikshepa, the outgoing energy, and avarana, the transforming energy, which are of great potentiality and power, and whose form is happiness. The great Maya, when non-intelligent and material, has three attributes. Sattva, sattva, rajas, and tamas, those are the three gunas. So in other words, the whole manifest material universe is made of these three gunas. The non-intelligent form of Maya, covered by the avarana force, concealment, manifests itself as the universe, owing to the nature of vikshepa force. Now this is pretty, difficult to understand. So we're not going to try to figure it all out right now, what this is really saying. But when the avidya has an excess of tamas, which is the force, the quality of inertia, or the guna of inertia, then it manifests itself as Durga. The intelligence which presides over her is called Ishvara, or Shiva. So Shiva and Shiva and Durga, Durga really is another form of Parvati, Shiva's consort. So it's saying that they come out of tamas, out of inertia. When the avidya has an excess of sattva, it manifests itself as the beautiful Lakshmi. The intelligence which presides over her is called Vishnu. So Vishnu and Lakshmi are an item. They go together. They are, Lord and goddess, or God and goddess, Vishnu and Lakshmi, and they are sattva. They are the guna sattva. Okay. When the avidya has an excess of rajas, it manifests itself as the wise Saraswati. The intelligence which presides over her is known as Brahma. So Brahma and Saraswati go together as well, and they are rajas. So Brahma and Saraswati are an item. Brahma is the creator. Saraswati is the goddess of learning and the arts. Anyway, gods like Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, that's the Trinity, the Hindu Trinity, or Trimurti. Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu, or it's really generally Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, are all seen in the Great Spirit. Bodies and all material objects are the various products of avidya. I think that's saying that the essence of the gods are in the eternal spirit, the essence. And the forms of these gods are not really real. It's just the forms, just like in all of us is a spirit, and our forms is not, our outward form is not the true thing. It's the inward part, the spirit within. All things are seen as finite, etc., endowed with qualities, etc., and there arise various distinctions merely through words and names, but there's no real difference. Therefore, the things do not exist. So they don't really exist because they're not truly real. The great and glorious one that manifests them alone exists. This is exactly what A Course in Miracles says, by the way. That God alone is real. God alone exists. Nothing else is real. There's nothing else real. Everything else is illusory. Though things are false and unreal, yet, as the reflection of the real, they, for the time being, appear real. The one entity, blissful, entire, and all-pervading, alone exists and nothing else. He He who constantly realizes this knowledge is freed from death and the sorrow of the world wheel, meaning samsara. So in other words, you can, even in a body, you can realize this one self, this all-pervading one self or spirit, and you can go beyond sorrow. You can go beyond samsara, you can end the cycle of samsara, and you can end your suffering. That's what this is saying. This is also what Course in Miracles says. When, through the knowledge that all is illusory perception, arupa, by the intellectual refutation, apavada, of other doctrines, this universe is resolved into the one, then there exists that one and nothing else, then this is clearly perceived by the mind. From the Annamaya Kosha, the physical, in other words, Annamaya Kosha is the physical, it says physical vehicle, but you could say the physical sheath or the physical matter of the Father, and in accordance with its past karma, the human soul is reincarnated. Therefore, the wise consider this beautiful body as a punishment for the suffering of the effects of past karma. So not many people, walk around thinking that their body, they're being punished and by having a human life. But this is what this is saying, and we don't like to, not many people like to think that way, but on some level, we might have a sense that that is true, that we're kind of in prison here, and when we come to our senses at moments, we remember that, we realize, oh man, how did I get here? Where is my true home? This temple of suffering and enjoyment, human body made up of flesh, bones, nerves, marrow, blood, and intersected with blood vessels, etc., is only for the sake of suffering, of sorrow. This body, the abode of Brahma, and composed of 5 elements and known as Brahmanda, the egg of Brahma or microcosm, has been made for the enjoyment of pleasure or suffering of pain. From the self-combination of the spirit, which is Shiva, and the matter, which is Shakti, and through their inherent interaction on each other, all creatures are born. So Shiva and Shakti coming together is what brings everything into existence. That's Shakti over here. I'm Shiva. From the fivefold combination, there she is. From the fivefold combination of all subtle elements in this universe, gross innumerable objects are produced. The intelligence that is confined in them through karma is called the Jiva. All this world is derived from the 5 elements. The Jiva is the enjoyer of the fruits of action. So Jiva is the individual self. Like, we are all jivas, and we are the enjoyer of the fruits of action and fruits of karma. Okay, in conformity with the effects of the past karma of the jivas, I meaning Shiva, regulate all their destinies. Jiva is immaterial and is in all things, but it enters the material body to enjoy the fruits of karma. So you could say that Jiva is like the soul, right? The soul. Soul is Jiva. There's a term Jiva Mukti or Jivan Mukti, which means the liberation of the soul. And Jivan Mukti, Jiva Mukti, by the way, is a style of yoga, is a modern style of yoga that was created by David Life and Sharon Gannon. And they started in New York City. And Jiva Mukti means that you liberate yourself while you're still alive in your body. And it's something that rarely happens, but it's possible, according according to these texts. Anyway, bound in the chain of matter by the karma, the jivas receive various names. In this world, they come in again and again to undergo the consequences of their karma. When the fruits of karma have been enjoyed, the jiva is absorbed in the Parabrahma. What that means, I'm not exactly sure, except I think it means that when you exhaust all of your karma, then you go back to source, right? You go back to God or to infinite intelligence, cosmic intelligence. And the words that this text used for that are Shiva and Jnana and some other words too. Paramatma, which means the supreme soul, or Parabrahma, supreme deity. There's a lot of different synonymous words that are used. Anyway, that was the first chapter of the Shiva Samhita. And I hope that was interesting. I think it's very fascinating. And there's so many similarities between this and A Course in Miracles. I've gotten into A Course in Miracles in the last 7 or 8 years. I was introduced to it through a book called The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. Gary Renard has written at least 3 other books now too, but that was probably his most well-known and the bestseller that he wrote. It's a great way to get into A Course in Miracles if you're interested. But Course in Miracles is like non-dual philosophy as presented by Jesus, not by Shiva. And it's likewise very fascinating, especially if you've read some of these Hindu texts, to look at something that came out in the 20th century that looks so similar to what these texts are saying, and by a woman Helen Schucman, who was the one that A Course in Miracles came through. As far as I'm aware, she did not know anything about Advaita Vedanta. So that's what makes it even more interesting, is whoever was coming through her was basically talking Advaita Vedanta. And if that's what Jesus was really teaching, I think that's something fascinating that we should really consider. You know, was Jesus originally, or was his real teaching Advaita Vedanta, like what this is teaching? Anyway, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope this is helpful. And as always, see ya on the flip side. Namaste. Om.